Good day, martial world. My name is Michelle Manu, and you're watching the Masters Hall of Fame World News. Today we're joined by Admiral Frank Dux, a well-known Frank Dux. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
It's so wonderful to have you. Well, I want to talk, we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to ask Frank a little bit about why you love martial arts and what has been your progression with the martial arts.
I think I love martial arts. It goes all the way back to when I was a young boy. I didn't have the ability to buy shoes. I actually had to make things work with just combat boots. And I didn't have the ability to buy cleats or, required...
Sporting equipment.
Yeah, training equipment that you get, when I was like playing football, for example, as a young boy, you want to play football in your high school, but you have to have the equipment deposit put up. And I couldn't, my family couldn't put it up. They were Holocaust survivors. My mom came out of Hungary, my father Austria. They met in Israel. They have an amazing story amongst themselves and how they met and their love affair. But they of course wanted to provide for me the best they could, and they couldn't, unfortunately. They barely spoke English, came to the United States, trying to get jobs. We were lucky we had food on the table. My mom was very, very ill, so most of the money went to support her for medical condition and medicine as a result of having survived the war and the hardships of the war. And so I wandered one day, coming back in junior high school, and I happened to see Bill Ryusaki in his dojo, and he was teaching, and I wanted to learn. And being an industrious young man, I went to the Chinese restaurant, a few doors down, and I made a deal with them. If I swept up the restaurant, would they let me use the pail and the shovel and give me the cleaning supplies? And I would walk over to Bill's school and I would clean his windows, like the kids, on the you'll see them in Mexico. They clean whether you ask for it or not, they clean their windshields, and then people give them money. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I did that for him. He kind of laughed. I did it like 2 or 3 times. He was like, "What's this kid doing?" And then he realized I would be kind of looking in, and it was my way of paying for lessons. And I'd actually gone to his studio prior to this, like 2 weeks, and walked in with my dad, and I could see the look on my father's face when he couldn't afford to pay. So that's when I found that one. And it was just a great experience because we had an understanding, Bill and me, and I would do this, and he would teach me through the window. While he had regular classes going on, he would always pull up his blinds high enough for me to look through. And so, and then he would always send somebody out to get me, and I was like timid, or I thought, oh, maybe they, the kids, and they would run away. And I did this with him. I did it with Bong Suhan in the school in Santa Monica. I would go down to the Chuck Norris school, and Chuck Norris had his, and he would actually teach out of the school on Ventura Boulevard near Van Nuys. They also had a school, I think, in Torrance. Bob Osman, amazing guy. I mean, the strongest, biggest guy. I was a kid, of course, at the time, but he was just, I looked at the guy, he was a monster, They have a picture of him fighting a tiger in his dojo, and he had a helmet. And what people don't realize is he really did fight that tiger on the set of Dr. Moreau, and the tiger bit through the helmet.
Oh my goodness.
And he has the hole, in the helmet where the tiger's tooth went through. And, he had the pointed one, I guess, because it went in the top part, not through the skull. And so, I'm very fortunate. I mean, it's a very rich experience in that. And it also worked to my benefit. And I always try to tell people, sometimes the greatest gifts you get are the worst things you think that are happening for you today. True. It's like growing pains. You can't grow as a martial artist unless you experience pain. And you can't give birth as a woman and having a child without experiencing pain. And it's just a natural process of life. And out of that comes something great, an appreciation for what it is you're doing, value. Pain gives us value for what we're doing. If it's given to you, you kind of discard it. If things come easy, you discard it. And that's one of the beauties of the martial arts, I think, lifestyle, or martial arts in general, is that you learn to accept pain and look at it and process it differently. You don't, if you're really learning it properly, you're not taking it yourself and say, woe is me. You get rid of the pity parade. You know, I could sit there and do a pity parade of how poor I was.
We all can.
I can't afford lessons. You know, at that time, did that stop me? No. In fact, it made me better because, well, it made me better because here's what it gave me a plus that nobody else had. Because I didn't go in and get formal instruction, I had to teach myself how to learn martial arts by watching. And so what happened later on in life is I started meeting greater talents, more interesting people, different arts, and I loved traveling the world. That's one of the things. And I didn't have to even speak the language to learn. And that's what really worked for me. So I was able to learn, when I traveled Mongolia, I learned the Bandajo arts and the Oha arts. I learned Chua Ka. Chua Ka is an ancient form of massage. And I don't know, some people have seen me on YouTube, and that's incredible, for example. And I use that technology to heal kids who've never walked before and watch them walk. Done that several times using it. I wasn't formally instructed in it, but hanging around the shaman, hanging around the people, I started to see what they were doing. I was able to understand without them having to verbally tell me, okay, this does this, this is, I could pick it up.
Right.
And so I took what was really a negative in my life and turned it into one of the greatest blessings I could have ever had. Because it really trained me, it tooled me.
Well, you take all these experiences, and you were a contributing source to a Navy SEAL manual.
Yeah,
I think it's a Spec War.
Yeah, I'm identified as the contributing source, or a contributing source, one of 8 people who, and at the time I think there was only 4 of us when it was first being initiated, but one of the contributing sources for writing the Combat Fighting Course Manual of the U.S. Navy SEALs, official mail, the title is K4310097.
How does that make you feel?
It
contributes to something so profound.
Well, it makes me feel great because I get a lot of letters and I get a lot of pats on the back from boys who come home who used what I taught them and how it saved their life. And unfortunately, you also hear stories of how they were taught certain things by certain celebrities of in martial arts, and how it got their buddies killed. And this is where people need to understand there's a difference between theory and reality. And that's why if you look at all the greatest masters, they always said, fight as you train, train as you fight. In other words, you have to do it full time. You have to be willing to take a hit, you have to be willing to give a hit. And if you keep not willing to put in the time and the energy, then understand it for what it really is. What you're doing is maybe cultural exchange, a hobby, preservation, but don't exactly. But do not call it defensive tactics or self-defense. And I think a lot of people feel a need in our industry that they have to say that they teach self-defense in order to fill their schools when they don't. You know, one of the things I used to do when I taught more of the traditional system, in Dux Ryu we have many, many systems. We're more of a family. And like we'll have Taekwondo, we have even one thing that's just sport. And we call it that.
Should, yes.
And we call it that. And we just call it, sport martial arts, not self-defense martial arts. And as a result, we're far more, well, not only that, but we found out we're far more successful. I do this in Mexico. And we've been able to fill the schools because a lot of people do not want the self-defense or the fighting or violence. So they just want something disciplined for their kids, and they want them to compete and be happy. And we say, you do this, but understand this. Don't rely on this for self-defense. If you want to do that, you need to train in something else that's more of a combat-driven course, and you can do both. And that's what people need to do is appreciate,
the differences.
The differences. And unfortunately, there's so much disrespect in martial arts for different systems because of this tunnel vision. And I honestly feel it's a lack of self-confidence on the part of the instructors themselves, thinking that they will be misperceived or fear of competition, and you see it in every industry. It's not just martial arts.
Sure. Well, that's some great insight. Speaking of Dux Ryu and all the other, Dukes, you're a successful business owner in the martial arts community and internationally, what has been something that's wonderful for you that you could share with our audience about having these successful, thriving businesses all over the world?
What's wonderful for me is when Bloodsport came out, I had an opportunity. I could have gone to Beverly Hills and had a lot of these millionaires, and it was really interesting. They wanted to back me and give me, I could have written any check I wanted and been in every major place in the United States. They were willing to open schools up in, Manhattan, Texas, Houston, Beverly Hills, Buckhead, Atlanta. And I walked all the way from that, and instead I went to remote villages in Mexico. And I went to places where they had no martial arts. And it goes back to when I was saying I had no shoes. Well, the reason I ended up doing martial arts is because you didn't need shoes to do martial arts. You didn't need all this equipment. I could do it. You did it in your bare feet. And so I would go to these countries, and you'd see all these kids sitting on the sidelines because only 22 kids could play soccer on a field.
Sure.
But there'd be hundreds of kids standing around. And so I'd gather all the kids after the game, and I'd teach one guy to be a teacher, and then we fill up the soccer field.
Great.
Okay, and then you have 100 kids there, 200 kids, and all of a sudden they're able to do stuff. And then you're able to pass on these lessons in life that it doesn't matter how poor you are. It doesn't matter if you're educated or not. You can uplift yourself. You have a spirit. Don't lose your integrity. Don't lose who you are. Sell out. You don't need to survive. And that's the greatest thing. I go to Mexico regularly, and taxi cabs will pull over, and a guy will get out and want my autograph, and being celebrated by the people there. For example, in different parts of the world, I go to different parts of the world, and they don't know me so much for Bloodsport, but they know me for a lot of the humanitarian work I do.
That's wonderful.
I was involved in a project with a guy named Chris Sanders about bringing clean water to remote villages in Africa. People don't even know about that. We figured out, one day I'm sitting there and there's this huge humidifier, and it's capturing all the water. They're human in these regions, they don't have water. So what if we just set up a bunch of humidifiers? And so we invented these giant humidifiers to go in, and basically the petrol that runs it doesn't cost very much, and we are able to capture this water, and they charge a little fee, like a nickel or something, but now they've got clean water. And so many people right now don't realize that that's like one of the most scarcest resources in the world. It's just clean drinking water for people, being able to bathe in it, and being able to provide that. And I, of course, am like a minor cog in that solution, that problem. I want to get real clear. But being part of that, we were responsible. I was on the board of U.S. Oil and Gas. A lot of people don't know that because I was involved. I got into it because I was involved in sustainable energy systems way back in the day. And again, it goes back to my martial training, where it was learning to do with having nothing.
Right.
And so one of my partners was involved in influencing T-Bone Pickens, who now is doing the wind turbine answer.
That's excellent.
And we're seeing that today. So there's a lot of things that,
No, you're successful.
And I owe it to like my martial arts background. I owe it to the hardships I've overcome. I think one of the most interesting things about my history is that I was actually frozen out. I wasn't part of the clique, the martial art clique in the 1980s, and it was a clique. And Black Belt Magazine, basically, in my opinion, and I'm going to catch some credit for this, I'm sure, but it was basically a mail order catalog with articles. They had their own stars that they promoted their books, and those are the only ones they kind of featured, and if you weren't part of that group, you were locked out. And I'm writing a book called Ninjas Are Bravo Sierra, okay, which really exposes it really shows you what real martial arts is about, the real history of what ninjutsu was and things, and how people have taken to something and commercialized
Sure,
it.
of
And by
course, like
commercializing
everything.
it,
Yeah.
I believe they weaken the entire industry. I mean, you'd never see the kind of conduct when I was going up in the arts that you see today on the internet. There's no instructor would even allow a student to even engage in that kind of behavior. Now it's kind of like, oh, it doesn't affect me, why should I care? And it's like, yeah, you should care.
So if I was to ask you, if there was one thing in the martial arts community that you could change or modify, get rid of altogether, what would that be?
I think there needs to be, honestly, regulation. Now, a lot of people are scared of that, but I really believe in that. That doesn't mean no one should be able to found their own art or do their own art. But the regulation should be like professionalism. If certain person's engaging in a certain lack of professionalism.
Behaviors.
Well, here's a good example. You know, anybody can go in a dojo. Why isn't there a background check to make sure this guy's in a pedophile? To make sure that person has, you know, is going to be the kind of example that we want to hold up for children.
True.
Okay, these are the things that I think that are really important. And you know, you have it in other industries. You have it in the medical profession. We have it in the legal profession.
Yeah.
And I think we need the same thing. I think the martial arts industry needs to have its own version of the AMA, for example, that allows certain people to be professionals and teach, and certain people who can do whatever they want. And the one thing I love about like what we're doing with Masters Hall of Fame is it's free of that kind of political structure. I've noticed that, you know, I was honored by it when other halls of fame were being told that if I showed up, okay, all these celebrity martial artists would walk out and not attend, and the person who ran that Hall of Fame, I wouldn't mention the name, and has told me straight face to my face, straight up, he says, well, you know, it's a business decision, that's why I can't have you there, I can't have you network with all these other people because of these group of individuals, and they will, you know, I can't have it. So, whereas when I met Dan Hecht, he didn't care. He says, oh, you aren't the show? No, that's your problem. He's coming to my event.
Actually, he brags on you quite a bit. You're out there in jeans the day I'm helping set up, and what other celebrity would you see do that? So it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, and it's because I think Dan's a real martial artist. He's been a policeman. He's been involved with law enforcement. He's been in the military. He's coming from a different mindset. I think the thing about law enforcement, and people don't honor enough officers for this, or the military, is this is an individual who's willing to put their life on the line based on principles, moral principles, okay? And they're even willing to do things like take a life, which no human being really wants to ever be in a position to do.
No.
But they're willing to do that to protect others, to serve others. They really are there for a higher ideal. Whereas other people, they don't live for higher ideals, they live for themselves. Or ego. They want, you know, they're wearing that black belt because it looks good. Oh, I'll get girls, you know. And that's one of the reasons why I did martial arts also. I'll be honest with you. I thought, oh, if I get a black belt, you know, all the girls would want to be with me. You know, of course, I was 13 years old.
That's why I have a black belt, because all the guys want to be with me, see? You know, for our listeners, our viewers that don't know, Dan Hecht, who Frank is referring to, is our chairman and CEO of the Masters Hall of Fame. So, well,
Daniel Hecht, yeah.
Yeah, well, Frank, you know, this has been an amazing interview. We're going to conclude now. Is there anything you'd like to share with our audience before we...
I think if you really want quality in your life, I'll teach you a little secret to being successful in life. Do 3 random acts of kindness every day. That's it.
Makes you feel good.
And well, it's not about feeling good. I really believe that there's we're all spiritually connected and we're connected by energy. And when you do that, you tap into a force that's out there, and it comes back to you tenfold. So if you want to know the secret of my success, it's just very simple. Just stop living for yourself, because if you're living for yourself, you're living out of fear. Live for higher ideals, strive to be kind to others, even your enemies.
Ooh, powerful stuff. So Frank, would you give our audience a way to contact you? So like on Facebook, it's...
Sure. On Facebook, well, there's 47 impersonators, so on Facebook, so it's Frank W. Dux, and it's the one with me on the cover of Warrior Magazine.
Okay.
That picture. Or you can reach me at hanshifrankdux@gmail.com. That's HANSHIFRANKDUX@gmail.com.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well,
Thank you,
Thank you
Michelle.
so much for being here.
And thank you.
Pleasure. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michelle Manu, and you've been watching the Masters Hall of Fame World News. Now, like with Frank Dux, you can contact him directly, or to contact any of our guests, you may write to us at worldnews@mastershalloffame.org. Well, we'll see you next time. Until then, master self.